My name is Maisi. I am 31 years old. I live in Edinburgh, Scotland. It is a beautiful and historical place. I see castles, stone streets, and old buildings every day. But inside my home, things are not beautiful. I live with my husband, Daniel. We have been married for 7 years. At first, I thought we were happy. I thought we were building a good life together. But now, everything feels different. I feel like I live with a stranger. Daniel does not hurt me. He does not shout. But he does not smile much anymore. He does not ask how I feel. He does not look at me with love. Every day he comes home, sits on the sofa, and turns on the TV. He talks more to the news than to me. I cook dinner, I clean the house, I wash his clothes. He eats the food I make, but he never says thank you. He never says, "This tastes good." Sometimes I ask, "Do you like it?" He just says, "It's fine." Then he looks at his phone. His mother visits every Sunday. She never says kind things to me. She brings pies and cookies, but only for Daniel. She says, "He needs real food." I say, "I cook for him every day." She just looks at me and says nothing. Sometimes she calls me her instead of using my name. Is she working now? Or has she cleaned the house well? I stand there and feel like I am not part of the family. I try to be polite. I make tea. I offer biscuits. I smile. But she always looks past me, like I am not even in the room. Daniel does not say anything. He listens to her and laughs. He never says, "Maisi is doing her best." That hurts more than her words. Daniel's sister Anna visits too. She comes with her husband and children. They talk and laugh. They talk about family trips, birthdays, school. I sit and listen. I try to join, but they don't hear me. Anna once said to Daniel, "You should have married someone more like Mom. Someone who knows how to be part of a real family." She said that while I was sitting right there. I looked at Daniel. He did not speak. He did not defend me. That night, after they left, I asked him, "Do you think I don't belong in your family?" He said, "They just need more time." I said, "It's been 7 years." He said, "Let it go." Then he went to bed. I do not have family here. My parents live in England now. I call my mom every week. She asks, "Are you happy, Maisi?" I say yes. I don't want her to worry. But inside, I feel small and lost. I used to work before the marriage. I worked at a shop. I liked speaking to people. I liked having my own money. But Daniel said, "You don't need to work. Just take care of the house." At first, I agreed. But now, I feel like I have no life outside these walls. I wake up early. I make breakfast. I wash the dishes. I clean the rooms. I do the laundry. I make dinner. I sit beside Daniel in the evening, but we don't talk. Sometimes I feel like a shadow. One day, it rained all afternoon. I sat near the window. I watched people walk past with umbrellas. A couple held hands and shared a coat. I felt a tear in my eye. I didn't cry, but I felt that tear inside my chest. It stayed there all day. Sometimes I ask myself, why do I feel so alone in my own house? The rooms are full, but my heart feels empty. Even when Daniel is home, I feel like I am by myself. One evening, I made chicken stew. I know Daniel likes it. He came home, sat down, and started eating. I asked, "How was work?" He said, "Same as always." I said, "Do you like the food?" He said, "It's okay." Then he looked at his phone again. After dinner, I cleaned everything. Daniel went to the living room. I stood in the kitchen and looked at my hands. They were red from the hot water. I felt tired, not just in my body, but in my heart. That night, I went to bed early. Daniel came in later and lay beside me. He didn't say goodnight. I looked at the wall and thought, is this really marriage? Another time, I bought a small yellow flower from the shop. I put it on the kitchen table. It made me smile. When Daniel saw it, he said, "Why do you waste money on things like this?" I said, "It was just £1. It made me happy." He didn't say anything. He walked away. That flower died after 5 days. I threw it away and didn't buy another one. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror. My eyes look tired. My face looks pale. I ask, where did the happy Maisi go? I used to laugh. I used to dance while cooking. I used to sing while cleaning. Now I stay quiet. I try to move without making noise. I try not to do anything wrong. Last week, I forgot to wash Daniel's blue shirt. He was upset. He said, "You had all day. What do you even do?" I said, "I'm sorry. I was busy with the kitchen and the floors." He said, "You always have excuses." I went to the laundry room and sat on the floor. I felt tears on my face. I didn't wipe them. I just sat there. I feel like I am not part of this family. I feel like I am not part of any family. One Sunday, I saw Daniel and his mother laugh together in the garden. I stood at the kitchen door and watched them. They looked so close. I wanted to walk out and join them, but something inside me said no. I turned away and went back to the dishes. Later that night, Daniel asked, "Why didn't you come outside?" I said, "I didn't want to disturb." He said, "It's your house too." But his voice didn't sound warm. It sounded like he didn't really care. Sometimes I sit in the bedroom and look out the window. I watch the birds fly. I watch the sky change color. I ask myself, is this the life I want for the next 10 years? But I don't know the answer. I am not ready to leave, but I am not happy staying. Maybe one day things will change. Maybe one day I will feel loved again. Before I continue my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? Sometimes I wonder if someone out there really understands me. Just knowing you're here gives me strength. The next morning, I made porridge for breakfast. Daniel sat at the table reading something on his phone. I said, "There is honey if you want." He didn't answer. I waited a moment, then sat down with my own bowl. The only sound was the spoon in the bowl. It was quiet, but not a peaceful kind of quiet. It felt like silence was growing between us, little by little, every day. After breakfast, Daniel left for work. He didn't say goodbye. I looked at the closed door for a long time. Then I stood up and started cleaning. I cleaned the kitchen, the bathroom, the floors. I didn't stop moving. If I stopped, I would feel too much. In the afternoon, I went for a walk. I needed fresh air. The sky was gray. The wind was cold. I walked down the street and turned into a small park. It was quiet. A few people sat on benches. A woman walked her dog. I sat near a tree and watched the leaves move. I saw an old couple holding hands. They smiled at each other. They didn't speak much, but I could see the care between them. It made me feel warm and sad at the same time. I wanted that. I wanted someone to hold my hand. I wanted to feel close to someone again. When I went home, the house felt colder. I put on the kettle and made tea. I sat on the sofa and held the warm cup in my hands. I looked at the clock. It was still early. Daniel would not be home for another hour. I thought about calling my mom, but I didn't. I didn't know what to say. Later, Daniel came home. I smiled and said, "I made soup tonight." He said, "Okay." He took off his coat and walked into the living room. He sat down and turned on the television. I stood in the kitchen and stirred the soup. My smile faded. We ate dinner in silence. I asked, "How was your day?" He said, "Busy." I waited, but he didn't say more. I said, "Mine was quiet. I went for a walk." He nodded once, but didn't look at me. I looked at my spoon and said nothing more. After dinner, I washed the dishes. Daniel sat in the living room. I could hear the sound of the television. It felt far away. I finished cleaning and went to the bedroom. I sat on the bed and looked at the wall. It was white and empty, like how I felt inside. I picked up an old photo from the drawer. It was from our wedding day. We were both smiling. We looked so happy. I touched the picture and asked myself, where did that couple go? I put the photo back and closed the drawer. The next day, Anna called. She asked if she could drop off some toys for her boys. I said yes. She came over with 2 bags. She looked around the house and said, "Still the same." I didn't know what she meant, but her voice sounded sharp, I said, "Would you like some tea?" She said, "No, I'm in a hurry." She looked at me and said, "You and Daniel don't come to family dinners anymore." I said, "We're just quiet these days." She said, "You know, Mom worries about him. She says he looks tired. Maybe he needs more support." I smiled a little and said, "I do my best." She didn't smile back. She said, "Anyway, I'll go now." When she left, I stood at the door and felt like crying. I didn't cry, but I felt the tears close. Why did I feel like a problem in Daniel's family? Why did I always feel like I was not enough? That evening, I told Daniel what Anna said. He said, "They just care. Don't take it the wrong way." I said, "But they always say things that hurt me." He shrugged and said, "They don't mean it." Then he looked back at the TV. I said, "Do you ever feel like I don't belong with your family?" He said, "I don't think about it." I said, "Well, I do. I feel alone." He didn't answer. I waited. He still didn't speak. I stood up and left the room. In the bedroom, I sat by the window. The sky was dark. The stars were out. I looked at them and whispered, "Please, just let me feel loved again." I didn't expect an answer, but it helped to say it. A few days later, I got a message from my friend Isla. We went to school together, but we hadn't talked in years. She said, "I'm in Edinburgh next week. Want to meet?" I said yes quickly. I was happy, but also nervous. I hadn't seen a friend in so long. When we met, it felt easy. We sat in a small cafe and talked for hours. Isla told me about her job, her travels, her new dog. I told her a little about my life. Not everything, just a little. But she looked at me and said, "Maisi, you look tired. Are you okay?" I smiled and said, "I'm just a bit lost these days." She touched my hand and said, "I'm here. You can always talk to me." That small touch made me feel warm. Someone saw me. Someone cared. After that meeting, I felt a little stronger. I started walking more. I listened to music again. I cleaned the house not because I had to, but because I wanted to make things nicer for myself. I even bought another small flower, a pink one. I didn't care what Daniel would say. One evening, I wore a blue dress I hadn't worn in years. Daniel looked at me and said, "Why are you dressed like that?" I said, "I felt like it." He said, "It's just dinner at home." I said, "I know." He didn't say more, but I sat at the table in that dress, and I ate with a straight back and a quiet smile. That night, in bed, I looked at Daniel. He was already asleep. I whispered, "I am still here. I am still me." It felt good to say it. I still didn't know what I would do. I didn't have a big plan, but I started to think differently. I started to ask myself, what do I want? What makes me feel alive? And maybe, just maybe, I would start looking for answers. One morning, I woke up before Daniel. I stayed in bed and watched the soft light come through the window. I felt calm. I didn't rush to make breakfast. I didn't jump up to clean. I just lay there for a while thinking. I thought about the day I first met Daniel. He was friendly and kind. I was full of hope. I wanted a life with love, peace, and a family. But now, I felt like I had only given. I gave my time, my care, my voice. And in return, I felt empty. Later that morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Daniel came in and said, "No toast today?" I looked at him and said, "I didn't feel like making toast." He didn't say anything. He just poured his own cereal and sat down. We ate in silence. I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. I didn't want to cry anymore. I just wanted to feel like a person again. After Daniel left for work, I called Isla. I said, "Can we meet again?" She said, "Of course." We met in the same cafe. I told her more this time. I told her about the silence, the coldness, the feeling of being invisible. She listened. She didn't try to fix everything. She just listened. She said, "Maisi, you don't need to stay where love doesn't live." Her words were simple, but they stayed in my heart. That evening, I made a small change. I cooked food I liked, not just what Daniel liked. I turned off the TV after dinner and played soft music instead. Daniel said, "Why is the TV off?" I said, "I needed something different tonight." He looked at me, surprised, but he didn't argue. He picked up his phone. I didn't try to talk to him. I just listened to the music. I felt peaceful. The next few days, I started writing small notes for myself. Not letters, just words on small pieces of paper. You are enough. You are not invisible. You can choose. I put them in my drawer near my clothes. Every morning I read one. It helped me feel stronger. One Sunday, Daniel's mother came again. She brought cake for Daniel. She looked at me and said, "You look tired." I said, "I am, but I'm okay." She didn't ask more. She talked to Daniel about his work, about Anna's children, about a new chair she bought. I sat with them, but I didn't try to join every talk. I just listened. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. I didn't need their approval anymore. After she left, Daniel said, "Mom thinks you're distant lately." I said, "Maybe I am." He said, "Is something wrong?" I looked at him and said, "Many things have been wrong for a long time. You just didn't see." He didn't answer. He looked confused. Then he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "I don't know yet. I'm still thinking." That night, I didn't cry. I felt brave. I didn't have all the answers. but I knew I couldn't live like before. Over the next week, I made a small plan. I didn't tell Daniel. I just did it for me. I looked at a short course for adults at the library. It was a basic art class. Nothing big, just one afternoon a week. I signed up. The first day of class, I felt nervous. But when I walked in, I saw other people like me. Quiet, unsure, but ready to try. We painted small things, flowers, birds, cups. I felt happy. I had color on my hands and light in my chest. After the class, I smiled for no reason. I walked home slowly. I looked at the sky. I felt alive. At home, Daniel said, "Where were you?" I said, "I went to a painting class." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I wanted to." He didn't say more. He just nodded and turned back to his phone. But I didn't feel small this time. I felt proud. Every week, I went to the class. I made one friend there, an older woman named Jean. She said, "You have soft hands. Your brush moves like water." I smiled and said, "Thank you." It had been so long since someone said something kind to me. One day, Jean said, "I can see you have pain in your eyes, but I can also see strength." I didn't answer. I just smiled. But her words stayed with me. That night, I looked at Daniel while he was watching TV. I asked, "Do you think we are happy?" He looked at me and said, "I don't know." I asked, "Do you want this life like it is now?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe we just got used to it." I stood up and said, "I don't want to be used to pain. I want to feel alive. I want to be seen." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. Daniel said, "So what now?" I said, "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to change. You can join me, or not. That is your choice." That night, I slept well. For the first time in many months, I didn't feel lost. I felt strong. 2 weeks later, I packed a small bag. I didn't leave forever. I just went to visit my parents for a week. I needed space. I needed love. When I hugged my mom at the door, I felt tears in my eyes. She said, "You're home." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was. Now, I take things day by day. I don't know if my marriage will survive, but I know I will. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.